Welcome to WRAL Triangle and 2. I'm Mark Bergen, joined by Luis Fernandez. Football season is here. Week 0 is upon us, and we're going to go through the top storylines for each of the Triangle teams, starting with your beloved Carolina Tar Heels, Luis.
Yeah, Mark. We can't do it a normal way, right, and just talk about it. We're going to do this kind of in a draft style. So we're going to go back and forth here. Snake draft. Shout out to fantasy football. Getting started right about now. And we're just going to go back and forth and pick the different storylines that are most exciting to us, the things that we think are going to matter the most.
Yeah, and we're going to give you the first pick. You're a UNC alum, Luis, so you can kick us off and do the honors with your beloved Tar Heels.
So I'm not going to make this more difficult than it needs to be.
Okay.
The first storyline that we're watching for, the quarterbacks. This is very easy. When you're going from Sam Howell and then Drake Maye, now you have a question mark.
Who's next?
Exactly. Who's next? As of this recording, which we are recording on August 22nd, UNC has not made the announcement on who the starter is going to be. In fact, what they're going to do is wait until the day of the game against Minnesota, because Minnesota does not release depth charts.
Oh, so this is a little bit petty between the two schools.
In a sense, yeah. So Minnesota does not release depth charts. Not just like this season, not against, just in general.
Traditionally,
PJ Fleck, apparently not a big depth chart guy. So in response, UNC will not be releasing a depth chart. They did this once or twice last year, if I remember correctly. It just never really timed out to the beginning of the season where we're waiting to see who the starting quarterback is. So we won't know who the starting quarterback is for UNC until warm-ups before the game in Minneapolis.
Who are you hoping will eventually be the starter? Because you've got Connor Harrell, you've got Max Johnson. I know Jacolby Criswell is back with the Tar Heels. Of the three, just how do you see that race shaking out? Who do you think will actually be the starter come the opener on that Thursday night?
Well, so here's the thing. I think what UNC would have wanted would have been for Connor Harrell to run away with the starting job in training camp, right? He was the starter for the game against West Virginia, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And you know, he didn't really have the best game. Really, UNC as a whole struggled in that game, losing 30-10 against West Virginia. So you would have hoped that he would have ran away with it in training camp, but they haven't announced anything, so you kind of assume he hasn't. He's definitely got a lot of talent, you know, whether it be running or throwing the ball. And then the other two are Jacolby Criswell, who, you know, lost the battle to Drake Maye.
And that was close.
It was
close.
It came down to the very end of the season. He had spent multiple years at UNC, transfers to Arkansas. He's from Arkansas originally, and now he comes back to UNC. And then Max Johnson, who has all the experience in the SEC. He has, I have my notes here. He's thrown for over 5,000 yards in the SEC, Texas A&M and LSU, 47 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. So I think you would have wanted Connor Harrell to run away with this job. What I think is going to happen is Max Johnson will get the start, at least early on. That's just kind of what my gut is saying, not any kind of information there. And I think it's because of how UNC is going to try and play football this year.
Yeah, and Johnson's dad, Brad Johnson, longtime NFL quarterback too. So you have the family lineage of great athletic lineage with Drake Maye. This is maybe stepping on your pick a little bit, Luis. But for me, it is, can this team be better without Drake Maye?
Okay.
And it's the common theme. You know, I listened to what Mac Brown has been saying in the offseason at the ACC kickoff of, you know, we were trying to win the Heisman with Drake Maye, and we're going to throw the ball. We'll talk about this throughout today's draft of the top storylines, but it is going to be a different style of ball where it's not just going to be, let's hurry up quick, get to the line of scrimmage and try to just pass all over teams. I think it's going to be a little bit different than what we've seen the last 2 years with this Tar Heels team. And really which quarterback that is, I don't think you need any of them to be Drake Maye. I think it's playing sound football, knowing when to take risks, and protecting the ball, playing more of a ball control style offense, controlling the clock. You keep your defense off the field. I think whichever quarterback can do that best, it's not going to be as flashy as this last few years we've seen with both Drake Maye and Sam Howell.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I'm leaning towards Max Johnson right now is just because
the experience,
exactly. Like all those games being played in the SEC, that does mean something. I think with how UNC is going to play football this year, taking care of the ball is going to be very important, which brings me to my second storyline, the defense.
Geoff Collins, baby, new
Collins,
DC,
Waffle House man himself. Geoff Collins, throughout the offseason, there's been a lot of talk about how much energy he's brought to that defense. He's gone out of his way to really compliment Gene Chizik and the work that was done beforehand. But with Collins, he brings a lot of energy. He's talked about wanting to simplify the defense a little bit so that players can just move, can attack, can be fast. So I think that energy, if the defense can even elevate to just a point where it's average or above average, I think that does a whole lot for UNC, especially down the stretch. So my second big storyline is, what does the defense under Geoff Collins do? What does it look like? He's had a lot of success against UNC as the head coach at Georgia Tech. He was 3-1, I believe, against the Tar Heels. So, what does he bring to the team, and how does he improve that defense? Because that can take the pressure off of the offense and the quarterback.
You're in my brain, which is a dangerous place to be, but it's the complementary football, Lewis, is what I was going to say. And last year, Virginia put out the recipe of how to beat the Tar Heels, and it was dominate time of possession. TOP is not always a metric that always tells the tale, but that to me was several of UNC's losses on the back stretch. They got dominated on time of possession. If he can help with that of keeping the defense off the field, you run the ball effectively with Omarion Hampton, who we'll talk about here in just a second. That is going to be key in shoring up this defense for what's been a prolific offense the last 2 years. And I think that the Tar Heels' ability late in the season, which is my next pick, is how you finish. You start out 9-1 2 years back with Drake Maye. He comes onto the scene. Everyone's saying, could he potentially win the Heisman? We knew he was going to be one of the top picks, the third pick to the Patriots. You start 6-0 last year. You get up to number 10 in the AP top 25. You finish the year 2-5. Can you finish? And, that kind of mirrors with Geoff Collins as the new DC in helping with that. So that's my next pick. But all of this stuff, like we said off the top, Lewis, it's all correlated. But the complementary football, that to me is going to be the biggest measure of, is he effective in this position as the new defensive coordinator of the Tar Heels?
Yeah. I think just to go off of that kind of end of the season type stuff, right? In 2022, UNC finished 0-4 in their final 4 games. In 2023, 0-3 in their final 3 games, lost 5 of 7 down the stretch. This is not rocket science. This is not new information that we're putting out there, right? It's how do you finish the back half? The last 6 games of the season for UNC this year, not to skip too far ahead. Home against Georgia Tech, who they've struggled with. At UVA, a place where they've struggled to play. At FSU, right now ranked as top 25 team.
The highest ranked team in the ACC going into the year.
Exactly. Home against Wake Forest, rivalry. You never know what happens. At BC, and then home against NC State. So there are winnable games in there for UNC should they play better in the back half. Okay, so your second pick was...
My second pick was finishing. It's just finishing from what we've seen the last 2 years. Given all of that information you just gave us.
So my third pick then, I will once again keep it simple. Omarion Hampton. He's good.
That was next on my list. He's a good pick.
He's
good
pick.
1,500 yards on the ground a year ago.
And he said at the beginning of the season he wants to aim for 2,000. He's confident.
He's going full Barry Sanders on Chapel Hill. And listen, if he gets 2,000s, let's start the Heisman campaign right now.
Well, I mean, he's a preseason All-American. He's one of the best running backs, one of the best players in college football this year. So it's going to be how does he continue to hold those expectations? Running backs coach Larry Porter, we talked to him last weekend. And he said, he's the same old O. He's the same old quiet guy who, you kind of have to like get out of his shell a little bit. So he hasn't changed based on the expectations. How does UNC change? And this, as you can tell, is kind of a theme with what UNC is going to be like. If they want to run the ball well, they're going to need to play complementary football defensively and passing game. Everyone knows in the stadium that Omarion Hampton is going to be getting the ball. Like that's just everyone knows that. So how do you adjust? How do you keep defenses honest? You look at players like Caleb Hood, if he can continue to stay healthy. Darwin Barlow, I think, is another player, the transfer or two-time transfer coming over from USC, who could really kind of add to that running backs room. If they continue to ground and pound and make that more of their identity, they got to be able to not just lean on Omarion Hampton.
I want to make sure we do this for the viewers and the listeners. So the people that are watching on the 99 Fan YouTube page right now, you have no idea where I'm going with this.
No, I don't.
When the EA Sports college football video game came out, Omarion Hampton is ranked in like the 90s. He's the highest rated player on UNC. That gets me excited.
Yeah,
so it's like if you're playing that game of like who's going to tote the rock for the Tar Heels, he's the dude that's going to do it. This leads me to my next pick, Lewis. And it's, again, all of this stuff correlates. You have pretty much a brand new offensive line minus one starter. A lot of transfers, a lot of talent coming in. Can you translate that success of the ground game, 1,500 yards on the ground from a year ago? Can you do that again when you're going to be the guy who defenses are honing in and focusing on, right?
Yeah.
Drake Maye is gone. Tez Walker is gone. Josh Downs is gone. Players that we've seen produce at a high level from a skill position standpoint for North Carolina the last few years. When you're the guy and it's a stacked box of 8 guys in the box, can you at least move the chains, get 4 or 5 yards at a time and continue to move the football downfield? That's going to be the big thing. And you have new offensive linemen. How they gel early is going to be key for Omarion Hampton's success this season.
And I think that sometimes there's a misunderstanding about college offenses, right? Where it's, you think pass, pass, pass. Chip Lindsey, I think, wants to coach very complimentary ball. He wants to be able to run the ball. I mean, Omarion Hampton doesn't run for 1,500 yards because they, never run the football last year, right? So the key, I think, is going to be the passing game is going to be much more complimentary of what the running game does this year. So Nate McCollum, the former Georgia Tech transfer who actually played with Geoff Collins, way back when in Atlanta, he said that from the wide receiver perspective, from the offensive perspective, running the ball and deep shots downfield. That's what they truly want to be good at. And when you look at the players they have returning, the J.J. Jones, the Nate McCollums, Kobe Paysor, hopefully being healthy, they have a lot of speed, some talented young receivers as well. So how does the passing attack and the rushing attack balance itself out?
Chip, I know you're watching. Play action. Just set up the play action pass and listen, man. That is my list. That is my draft. It's with the lines. So it's kind of recap. Let's go through really quickly, just if people are watching. Your first pick, Lewis, was just the quarterbacks.
Yep. Who's going to start? Will it be Connor Harrell or Max Johnson or Jacolby Criswell? We will find out most likely hours, if that, before the Minnesota game, because they're not releasing a depth chart.
Mine was better without Drake Maye, ? So that was my first pick.
My second pick was defense. Geoff Collins. What does that look like? How does he transform this this UNC defense coming from Georgia Tech? That's going to be key in order for UNC to be able to reach its ceiling.
I had finishing after falling apart a lot at the end of the last 2 seasons. We had Omarion Hampton's emergence, and then again some new offensive linemen along the Tar Heels. Tar Heels offensive line, the big fellas up front.
Yeah, their returners, the people who they have coming back are really good, but there's a lot of just people
in general who are not. Some transfers. And that's going to happen with the transfer portal. But listen, let's wrap this. We've got other additions as well. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to have full previews for Duke and NC State. Luis Fernandez, Mark Bergen. Stay tuned for those other videos and the start of the college football season.